Welcome to The Whole Truth. I am going to introduce our MC tonight, Amanda Roundtree. She began performing improvised theater in 1992 and began telling her true stories to audiences in 2008. Her one-woman shows, The Good, Bad, and the Monkey, and 185 Buddhas Walk into a Bar, ran in Chicago and toured to other North American cities. You can find out all about Amanda and her improv and storytelling classes and shows at amandaroundtree.com. And here's Amanda. So let's have a warm welcome for Amanda Roundtree, our MC. Yay!
Yay! Thank you so much. Thank you, Diane. I just want to thank all of the librarians who made this possible, and also the Louisville Free Public Library. I'm a Louisville native, so it's kind of, and I love libraries, so it's like, this is really awesome. We're very honored to be here tonight. We have 5 stories for you. Is that right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yes, we have 5 stories for you tonight. We hope that you enjoy it. There is no intermission. The show goes about an hour. So if you need to, take care of your things, there's a bathroom right down the hall, and we put some snacks in the kitchen for you. All of your favorites. Eat what you want. So we've got 5 stories. I hope that these stories will inspire in you memories and reminders of experiences that you've had, or perhaps some of these stories may inspire in you gratefulness that you did not have these same experiences. Whatever it is, we hope that you enjoy the show. I'm going to start us off tonight with our first storyteller. Our first storyteller is an award-winning actor and writer who has toured 3 autobiographical solo plays all over the US and Canada. Her stories have been heard on NPR, that's Minnesota Public Radio, for those of you who do not know, CBC, and the Risk podcast. She teaches and coaches narrative of all kinds through the Story Studio, and you can find out more about her at amysalloway.com. I gave away her name. That's right. Please welcome to your screen. Please welcome to your screen, Amy Salloway.
Oh, thank you so much, Amanda. Thank you so much for asking me to do this. It's really, we knew each other back in Seattle. We were friends years and years ago when we were just little pups. And it's really great to be reconnecting, even if it's over Zoom. Okay, all right. I was just about to graduate from the University of Minnesota with a major in theater, along with 275 other majors in theater. In my 5 years at the U, I had gotten cast as, third Turkish handmaid who got to stand far, far upstage left and swing a basket. And I had played elderly villager, another character who did not speak in words, but who had a facial expression, the expression of old. In all my time at the U, I had hoped that like a director or a professor or even a grad student would see my talent shining through my basket swinging and hunching and say, she is amazing. But it had not happened, and it did not seem like it was going to happen. And then all of a sudden, it didn't matter. Because about 3 weeks before I was supposed to graduate, I found out that I had been cast in the Minnesota Shakespeare Company, which was an actual 3D, real professional theater company that toured 2 Shakespeare productions in repertory all over the Minneapolis park system in the summer. I did not even have my diploma yet, and here I was getting offered the role of Brutus in Julius Caesar. Now, this is a library show, so I bet you guys are literate, and I bet you know that Brutus is a male character. And in fact, that is what I said to Mark, the very large, loud, jovial director who had called me up on the phone. But Mark, Brutus is a male character. And Mark said, yep, he sure is, Amy, but you just wait and see what we're going to do with the show. We have a concept. You just come to the first rehearsal and you will see. And I thought, oh, duh, Shakespeare with a concept. See, that's what real theater companies do. Shakespeare at the OK Corral, Shakespeare on a pirate ship, Shakespeare as a kabuki opera. Awesome. This was real theater starting for me. So I get to the first rehearsal of Julius Caesar, and here is Mark's concept. It has several components. So first of all, this production of Julius Caesar is happening in the Paleolithic era. Imagine, if you will, Pangaea has only recently broken apart. Also, all of the characters are animals, not Paleolithic animals, more like zoo and domesticated animals. So Caesar is a lion, roar. Octavius is a parrot, Cassius is a snake, Brutus is a dingo, as in ate my baby in the Paleolithic era. Also, and we're getting to the relevant part, it's cross-gender cast. So the only 3 male characters now in the play are Caesar, Octavius, and Mark Antony, that triumvirate. Everyone else is female. Cassius is a female snake. Casca is a female badger. I am a prehistoric female dingo. And, you know, I had training here. I was freshly minted. I had been sitting in classrooms in a corset. I knew how to scan iambic pentameter. I knew about dangling trochaics. I knew how to go back to previous folios of Shakespeare and look for alternative line interpretations to inform my character portrayal. Nobody gave a flying donut about any of that. All I heard at rehearsal was, Amy, I am not seeing dingo. Where's your dingo? Where's the growling? Where's the panting? When was the last time you gnawed on a hunk of carrion? Are you even doing the work? And I would be trying to cling onto my dialogue and figure out my character. And all I could think was, oh my God, Mark is right. I am not doing the work. Third Handmaid did not prepare me for this. Okay, Brutus is a dingo. How does Brutus think as a dingo? What is my motivation? So one day in rehearsal, we were working on the scene where Cassius is trying to convince Brutus to turn against Caesar. And as a snake, a manipulative snake, Carmen, the actress playing Cassius, was hissing a lot. And it was making it really hard to understand what line she had just said. And to try to cover up the fact that I had no idea what dialogue she had just given me or what my next line was, I got really, really close to her face and I started licking her all over. Carmen already hated me. She thought I was a hack and she recoiled in disgust. And Mark, the director, stood up clapping and screaming, yes, yes, that is what I'm talking about. And he was so excited. And I was so excited to finally have some kind of positive feedback that I abandoned all remaining dignity, all of it. And I ran over to the actress playing Casca and put one hand on her shoulder and lifted my leg. Casca jumped back in horror before I could release my bladder. But Mark just glowed like a supernova. Yes, yes, that is why we cast you. So we moved into performances in the parks. It was a very hot summer, very extremely humid, and we were all costumed in fake fur, layers and layers of polyester fake fur. And, you know, in Equus, the famous productions of Equus, where the actors playing the horses have those big metal cage heads for horses, we all had huge metal cage heads for our animals made very cheaply out of nickel. So they left green lines across our foreheads. And we had metal claws that snapped onto our wrists. I'd walk around the park trying to get to the, water fountain and the portalette in my fur and my cage head, and I felt absolutely ridiculous. People stared at me, and I growled back with a low dingo snarl, "Arr," which was kind of coming naturally by this point, and I just wished I could disappear. People would say things like, "Hey, are you in that show that's gonna," and I would say, no, this is something else, a wedding reception, and don't go see that, just don't. And I would duck into a porta potty. The other actors would be up on the picnic blankets behind the audience doing their warm-ups, walking around on all fours and sniffing each other's butts and howling and drooling. And I had no idea how this was so okay with them. All I could think of was like trying not to get my claws caught on my fur and trying to remember when to bark and when to pee and thinking how this was not acting. It just wasn't. And I counted down the minutes until I could go home and eat dinner. Well, there was an actress in the company named Nancy who played Brutus's servant. So Nancy was this 6-foot-tall Valkyrie of a woman with huge frothy hair and this buxom sense of good health. So she was obviously the choice to portray a chipmunk. Now, in Shakespeare's production of Shakespeare's Julius Caesar, you're a library crowd, so you probably know this is one of the plays that you study if you're learning about the tragic hero. So Brutus is a tragic hero. So Brutus ends up killing Caesar. Brutus stabs him with a sword and Caesar dies. He is the whole "et tu, Brute," and you, Brutus. And then Brutus feels so guilty and ashamed that he kills himself. He disguises it as a move on the battlefield. So on the battlefield, he says to his servant, "Hold out thine sword that I might run upon it." And his little servant is like totally upset, but holds out his sword, and Brutus impales himself on it and dies. In our production, Dingo Brutus says to her chipmunk servant, "Hold out thine claw that I might run upon it." And Nancy would stick out her little metal hand costume, and I would turn it towards my stomach in a harikari fashion and plunge it in and die. And Nancy would hold me there as I died. She would be rocking and shaking and crying actual tears over my lifeless body in the Lake Harriet Rose Garden. And, then like a good responsible rodent would, she would eventually drag me off stage so the next scene could happen. And even up, behind the audience, she would still be red-eyed and sniffling every single night. Well, one night, towards the end of this run, this scene had just happened. Nancy was backstage crying, wiping her tears on her fur. And she said to me, "I'm so sorry, Brutus." She always called me Brutus. I know I'm such a sap, but I just hate having to kill you. It absolutely rips out my heart. I can't take it." And I looked at Nancy, tears streaming down her face, and that coconut finally dropped on my dingo head. And I wanted to tell Nancy that I didn't deserve those tears at all, because I was a bad actor. I was a bad actor. Nancy was cast as a chipmunk, and she had been in that chipmunk every single night, so committed that she cried real fresh tears every time that she had to help her master die. I hadn't been in Brutus the Dingo for one moment. I had held this play at arm's length. I had locked myself in a metaphorical porta potty so I could look back at this show and laugh and jeer and think how much better I was than this prehistoric zoo fiasco. I had wasted my first professional post-college acting gig. I had wasted a director's confidence in my talent, which was supposedly all I ever wanted. I had wasted the things that I could have learned from an ensemble cast. I looked at Nancy with her red eyes, and I wanted so badly to just run over to her and pet her and tell her that I didn't deserve those tears, that she was the actress, and that I was only Brutus, in the sense that Brutus betrayed Caesar and Rome because he was an insecure wuss, and I had betrayed our show for basically the same reason. But she was still in character, you know, like combing out her fur and shaking the grass from her claws so she could go on for the curtain call. And if I started babbling at her, I would ruin that. And if I hadn't respected our show, I at least wanted to respect her. So instead, I listened with my canine hearing to the rabble of the Roman citizens. And I sniff the commingling sweat and pheromones from my fellow creatures. And I think about what it feels like to be truly present in a moment, present like a good, committed actor. Et tu, Dingo? Thanks.
Thank you, Amy Salloway. Let's give a round of applause. And she may not be able to hear you cheering at home, but why not make your neighbors wonder what you're up to? Please applaud and cheer. You can also comment in the chat if you want to say anything to Amy. She can read it. So yes, thank you. Oh my gosh, when I first heard your story, when you said dingo, like I was like, dingo, like eat my baby, dingo, and I was like, oh yeah, because that's exactly what you said. Love it. Awesome. Our next storyteller that we have tonight, there is a Shakespeare connection here that he didn't write in his bio, but I'm going to add it because I know him. Our next storyteller has traveled the world as a professional model, played collegiate football, and is currently working in Atlanta's primary trauma hospital with COVID-19 patients. So we can bang our pots for him, in addition to cheering for him. He has a unique perspective on the world that can only be shared with everyone through storytelling. And I will add that Will Hayes is also in my ensemble of improvised Shakespeare. So we improvise Shakespeare together, although we haven't done it in a while because of, you know, the panini going on. But ladles and jelly spoons, put your hands together. Welcome to the screen, Will Hayes.
Thank you, Amanda. I know we're connected through Shakespeare. You know we're connected through Shakespeare. Now everyone knows that we're connected through Shakespeare, and I love that. Again, thank you very much. It's just a kind of a weird thing because we're talking about Shakespeare, and people look up to Shakespeare as far as like the literary world. Well, when I was growing up, I looked up to my dad. My dad was everything to me, kind of like how most boys are. Their dad is everything. I thought my dad was huge. My dad had to be like 7 foot tall, big wide shoulders, hands the size of like a bear's mitt or anything of that nature. He was just a big, huge man. And I thought that one day I too was going to grow up to be a big, huge man. Now, let's start right there. I was a little bitty kid. I was shorter than the average, smaller than the average, thinner than the average. I was so thin that my favorite pastime was playing Legos underneath my twin bed. That's where I played everything. I would bring all my Legos together and I would create this little Lego world up under there. And I'd have one Lego man that represented me that was bigger than everybody else. Cause I was like, well, my dad's a big man. He's bigger than everybody. So then now I'm going to be bigger than everybody too. So while I'm up underneath the bed, I'm having a great time. It's a Saturday. The window's open. The birds are chirping. The kids are outside playing. I'm too small to play with them, so I'm up underneath the bed. My dad comes in my room and tells me, he says, hey, Get out from up underneath there. We going outside. I got something for you to do. I'm 12 years old. There's nothing that a 12-year-old needs to do on a Saturday at 1:30 other than play. But my dad had other alternatives. What I did not know is I was headed towards a rite of passage of becoming a man. I know in libraries there's a lot of books, but there's not a book about this, so listen up. So we go outside. My parents built a house on about 3 acres, give or take, depending on how you clear the land out. They had much more around. It was all trees around the edge. So my dad had built this dog pen in the backyard. Well, to say he built the dog pen is not accurate. He hired someone to build the dog pen. And so then he would then go and tell everybody that he built a dog pen. And my mom had alternative motives. She took the dog pen and put chickens in it. So it was the chicken pen. It wasn't a dog pen because the dog would just roam around the house. So we get about halfway there and he says, I want you to go out to that tool shed. I want you to get an axe. You see that tree right there? That tree done fell. I want you to take that tree and I want you to lay that tree down. About halfway down, don't let it hit the chicken house now. I want you to lay that tree down, cut it up into pieces, and then split it. We're gonna put it over there and season it for the rest of the year so that we can have some firewood. I'm 12. I don't know how to do grown man stuff. That's not like my job, but I'm gonna figure it out today. We lived in a very obviously rural area. So there was no books, there was no encyclopedias, there was no computers when I was 12 to go look at stuff. So I had to figure it out. I get out there, I cut the tree down. I lay it just right where it doesn't hit anything. Took me about all day. I don't know how long all day is in 12-year-old time, but it took all day. I got everything put together. My dad gets mad though. I see him coming outside of the back. I'm halfway back inside. He's coming back outside. He said, you done did it wrong. You did everything wrong. You done left about a 3-foot stump out there. And I told you to get the whole tree and get the whole tree down. But Daddy, I did. I got put the tree and I cut it up and I split them and it is taking me all day, but I did it. And he said, you didn't do it right. So he walked me back out to this about 3-foot stump that's sticking out of the ground. It's leaning a little bit. Some roots are exposed, but I'm not paying attention to that because I'm 12. I don't know grown man things. So my dad gets mad. He walks in. He says, go in that tool shed and get that pickaxe for me and bring it back. So I grabbed the pickaxe. Pickaxe is in the same spot, right there where the hatchet was, right next to where the shovel is. Everything's very organized because my mother did it, not my dad. So I go and get the pickaxe. I get the pickaxe and I hand it to him. He says, guard, now go back and put this back in the tool shed. I walk back and as I'm walking back, I hear thunk, 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 thunk. I don't know what that is. I don't know what thunks are. I don't know how to spell it or what it looks like when you do a thunk, but what he had taken the pickaxe and chopped around the stump somehow. And magically, my dad, this massive man of all power that came from like Mount Olympus, pulled the stump with all of his anger out of the ground. That solidified it for me. One, I'm not pissing my dad off. I'm not making him mad at all. I'm doing everything he tells me from now on because my father pulled a tree out of the ground. Two, that has to be the weirdest feat of strength I have ever seen at 12 years old. And I promise you, I'm going to do that one day. I went to school. I told my friends. I told my neighbors. I wrote it down on a piece of paper and sent it to a pen pal that I had in Brazil. that's a long story. We're not getting into that. Anyway, we're going to keep moving. So let's fast forward a little bit. I'm grown now. I got my own child, a son. He's my second born, but just the same. I love him dearly. He's 14 years old. So I'm thinking to myself, as he grows older, I went through this man rite of passage. I chopped down a tree. I split it up. I seasoned the wood from my dad. I have to find that opportunity for my son. It's impeccable that he goes through these rites of passage. So my mom calls me during this wonderful time of year called the pandemic. Yes, this is just a season. And so she says, a tree has fallen. And I need for you to come out and chop this tree down before it endangers something. It hadn't really fallen. It kind of fell, but you know how like a tree is here and then it had fallen and this part was cut, but this was still hanging on. And so now I said, aha, here it comes. I woke my son up because he was asleep. He's 14. That's all they do. And I said, boy, get in the car, put some shoes on. Let's go down to grandma's house. You're going to become a man today. See, I'm not going to leave things up to his imagination. I want him to understand what he's going through. And so we got down to my mother's house, way out in Stockbridge, Georgia. If you know where that is, congratulations. If you don't worry about it. It's close to Atlanta. And so we get down to Stockbridge. I get down in the back where the chicken pen is. Yes, still chickens in the pen, but all the chickens are just fine. But there's a tree and it's leaning on top right where I don't want it to hit that fence. So I said, son, go out there and get me the axe. You'll see it when you get out there. And halfway there, he says, but Poppy, what's an axe? And I said, just go and get it. And so he brought me finally back the axe. And I said, look here, this is what I want you to do. My dad did it to me, and I'm now giving this job to you. I want you to chop down this tree. I want you to split the wood up in 18-inch increments. I want you to split it up into little sections like a pie. And I want you to put it over there where grandma has the rest of the wood. Why? Because that's your job. You can do it, even if it just takes all day. And so my son went out there and he found the will and the way, and he tried to Google it on his phone because this is modern technology. He tried to Google it, but there's no modern technology at grandma's house. My grandmother still has a VHS tape that's sitting on top of two TVs that I put together in 1986. No, there's no Googling anything at grandma's house. So he just had to figure it out with sheer will and the generations of spirits within his soul that knew how to chop down a tree. And so he did it. And I went out there and I said, here's another opportunity to show my son that I am a man. Because he had left about a 3-foot stump back out in where the tree was. And he said, but Poppy, I chopped it down. I did everything that you asked me to do. I said, no, but you left the stump. And so now I'm trying to figure out how my father mustered the anger to pull the tree out of the ground, because I don't think I could do it. I'm doubting myself. I'm just saying, I did a lot of push-ups and a lot of weightlifting, but I don't know if I could do that. So I said, go outside, go in the tool shed and get the pickaxe. So he brought me back the pickaxe. And so I surveyed the ground while he was there. And I said, I'm gonna hit it there and there and there and probably there too. I didn't know what I was doing, but I'm trying to figure this stuff out. And so I took the pickaxe and I started hitting in just random spots on the ground. And I looked over and my son was looking at me, and I didn't like the look on his face. And I was like, I'm doing it. And he was like, okay. And I was like, you listen. So I grabbed the base of the tree, both hands, and I got in a half squatted, half standing position. And I went, and the tree wasn't moving. The tree wasn't moving. It didn't move. It didn't budge. It didn't do anything. I didn't make it like even lift up off the ground or nothing. So I said, well, do you feel like a man? And he was like, well, yeah, I guess that if man plays Fortnite all day. And I said, all right, get back in the car. Let's go. And I went over to my mom and I said, look, I'm going to pay somebody to get rid of that stump because I can't lift it up like that. Because in life, the most important part of being a man is knowing when you can do something and when you can't. That's it.
Thank you, Will. Round of applause for Will's story. And as I said, make your neighbors wonder what you're up to. You can cheer and applaud nice and loud, but you can also, if you want our storytellers to know what you think about their story, like I said, you can put it in the chat. You can put it in the Facebook chat, and we will hear it. We will get it. Thank you so much. I was listening to that and I was like, I'm just Amanda. I want to know how to be a man. And I feel like I still don't know. So still gotta do it. The secret to being a grown-up is to know when you don't know, Awesome. Thank you, Will. Our next storyteller, our next storyteller told me that I could just introduce him by saying that he's a storyteller based in Atlanta. At the risk of making his intro all about me, I am going to add that I have had the delight of sharing the storytelling stage with this storyteller, and that he is actually a great storyteller from Atlanta. So, haha, I fixed your typo, Chris. Please welcome to the screen, Chris Gray.
Oh, thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. I'm flattered. I don't know. The 2 years during the pandemic, I don't know. Am I a storyteller? Am I a performer? I've just been in my house. So I just feel like a madman. So, but, you know, I grew up in a house of all boys. I have 4 brothers, no sisters. So 5 boys. You know, and it's very funny because now as adults, my brothers and I all have daughters. So my mother has finally gotten the girls, you know, as granddaughters. But since we all grew up just, you know, boys in the house, none of us know how to raise daughters. Because, you know, we all were hoping, oh, we'd get sons. Oh, yeah, if I got a son, I would do this with him. And I'd do this. You know, I'd you know, take these experiences that I had as a kid and impart on them. But we all have girls. And so we're all like, oh, I can't really, you know, make her wrestle, you know, with me for dominance. You know, that you can't really do that. So I was very surprised one day when my daughter was standing in the living room yelling at me, and she was saying, Dad, I am not you. All right? Stop trying to make me you. I am me. And like, first I want to preface this by saying she's only 5 years old. So I was very like taking it like, whoa, this is coming at me this early? Like 5, you're like already at, yo, I'm me. Let me do my thing. And I was like, I was just asking you to put your shoes on. You know, that's all. I wasn't trying to make you like, other than I have shoes on and we need to go, that, yeah, like me, put on your shoes so we can leave the house. But that's it. You know, I just need your feet covered because I don't want you stepping on stuff, because right now is not the time to go to a hospital, you know, so just put your shoes on. So, but as much as it annoys me, I'm very proud of her that like at a young age that she is asserting herself like that. Just like, yo, stop trying to make me you. And I was very surprised because since I don't know how to raise daughters, I let my wife do a lot of the, you know, hey, this is how, you know, she grew up with all sisters. So she didn't have brothers. So she's very much like, I want to, you know, hear the experiences I had growing up as a young girl. I want to impart these on our daughter. And I'm like, yo, go ahead. I don't have a dog in the fight. Because I don't, you know, I'm gonna make her do stuff that I did growing up, like playing in mud and, you know, getting in fights and street football, and you only stop playing when a car's coming. Those are the things I knew growing up. So I was just very surprised she was coming at me with this energy, because I'm like, your mom's the one that's trying to make you like her, not dad, because my wife, our parenting styles are a little different. I'm a gardener. There's we read this thing where there was like a gardener parenting style and a carpenter parenting style. I'm definitely a gardener. I'm just like, I just put the seeds out. Here's the water, sunlight, and I don't know what's going to grow. We'll see. I may have put tomato seeds. I may have put, cucumbers. I don't know. I just threw it out there and I'm going to see what comes up. And then I guess I'll figure out how to eat it once it's there. And then my wife is very much like, this is how, she's going to do this. She's going to do that. And then, and so, I'm like, whoa, why you coming at dad with this energy? Dad's just very like chill, because that's what just very like, hey, let's see how it goes. Like for my daughter's 5th birthday, she had her first slumber party. All right. Me personally, I don't know anything about slumber parties. Boys don't have slumber parties, like, yeah, that's just, I can't imagine going to my dad's like, hey, dad, can I have a slumber party? My dad grew up in the 40s and he would probably just punch me in the chest and be like, no, but so I'm just like, slumber parties, okay, so my wife planned, like we had, four of her friends over. My wife planned this slumber party. She's like, oh, when I was, we made tie-dye t-shirts. We, had a scavenger hunt. We watched movies. We made popcorn. We did all these things. She had the whole night planned out. These little girls all came over, my daughter's friends. They all got together. They did none of that stuff. They got together and did their own thing. Like they didn't want to make tie-dye t-shirts. They didn't want to do a scavenger hunt. My wife did the t-shirts. She made the popcorn. They didn't want to watch any of the movies she thought they would like. None of it. They made their own fun for the whole night. And I was just trying to tell her, like, listen, just, let them, let them be who they are. Like they'll make that fun. You're putting too much pressure on yourself to like make this night just like how you remembered as your childhood, because this isn't our childhood, this is theirs. But she very much just wants to put these experiences on her. So this past winter break, we went to Disney World, took my daughter to Disney World for the first time. Now I grew up in Orlando. All right. My experience is going to Disney, and now granted, this is back in the day, but my experience of going to Disney was my mom got me and my brother's tickets. She drove us to the gate, to the parking lot entrance. She dropped us off. She said, here's some money so you can buy lunch, food, whatever you want. And she said, and I'll be back at 6:00, and I'll be back here at Goofy number 7, whatever this parking section is. And see ya. So we were going to Disney World, no plan, just, we got tickets. Let's see what's in here. But now apparently Disney World's different. Like you got to make reservations for rides and you got to get the Genie Pass. And my wife's like just meticulously, like she was planning a trip to Europe. She was like, okay, we're going to get here this day. And at 8:05, we're going to get on Space Mountain. And then at 9:38, you got a reservation for this ride. And I was just like, okay. And then, we got a dinner reservation here. And I was just like, whoa, that's okay. We get to Disney World. First of all, it's 2022. All right. My daughter's never seen a commercial. She watches Netflix, everything on demand. So she didn't even know Disney World existed. We've never spoken about it. So when we pulled into Disney World, we're like, do you know where you are? And she's looking around and she's like, oh, Mickey Mouse, Goofy. What is this? So like my wife was we were expecting this big, like, oh my gosh, but she's just like, she's never seen a commercial or advertising for it. So she was just like, huh, is this like Six Flags, but with Mickey Mouse? And I was like, well, way to break it down. Yes, it is. So we go in, my wife has this whole agenda about what we're going to do. The first thing my daughter sees is a carousel. And she's like, I want to ride the carousel. My wife is pissed because we have driven all the way to Orlando to do Disney World, and my daughter just wants to ride the carousel that they have at the Atlanta Zoo. And that's all she wants to do. So we get in line for the carousel, rode that thing 3 times. And my wife's like, well, don't you want to go to Space Mountain? My daughter's like, I don't know what that is. No, I want to ride the carousel again. So we ride the carousel. We finally get her off the carousel. We try and get her to, my wife's like, oh, we've got, let's get in this line for Pirates of the Caribbean. And we get in it. My daughter's unimpressed, And so she gets out, sees the Dumbo ride. Oh, I want to do that, which is just a big carousel. We get in that. She rides the carousel. My wife's like, let's go do this other ride. Like, unimpressed. Only thing my daughter liked was the carousel. She liked when the characters walk around because she's like, oh, it's Mickey Mouse. She liked that. And her favorite part, from what she told me, was the hotel pool. Oh, she loved the hotel pool. We went back to the hotel pool. She's swimming. She's having a great time playing with other kids. So I'm just like, wow, we wasted a lot of money on this, on the Magic Kingdom. So the next day, we go into Hollywood Studios. Now, I don't know if you've been to Hollywood Studios. It's all themed around, old Hollywood. For a child born in 2016, none of this means anything. She's just like, oh, what is all this? And then when she sees like kind of old things, like she's like, oh, is this like old movies back before there was color? And I was like, yeah, back before there was color. Because when she's seen an old movie in black and white, she's just like, yeah, there was no color back then. I guess prior to 2016, there was no color. So means nothing to her. But they have the Star Wars section. I'm a big Star Wars fan. So I thought, okay, we've watched some Star Wars. She's into it. She knows what the stormtroopers are. She knows who Chewbacca is, So I'm like, okay, let's go check out Star Wars, right? She sees the Chewbacca. She's like, oh, that's cool. And I'm like, let's go ride the Millennium Falcon ride. And she's like, okay. I'm like, it's a spaceship. We're going to drive a spaceship. And she's like, oh, like on the movie we're watching? I'm like, yeah. So we go in. If you've never ridden the ride, they pair you up, like 2 people are pilots for the spaceship, 2 people are gunners, and 2 people are engineers. Where there were 3 of us. So me and my daughter were the pilots. My wife was a gunner, and they paired us with 3 random people who didn't know us to be the engineers and the gun and the extra gunner. We get in, we're driving it around. My daughter's crashing into everything because she doesn't, she's just like, well, what do I do? And I'm like, pull the hyperspace lever. And she's like, what is that? What is hyperspace? And I'm doing it all, and we're just crashing. The people in the back are just like, this is not the ride we expected. So we ruined it for them. And so I'm in there having a ball. So we get out of there, and I'm like, wasn't that the best? And she's like, Dad, that was the worst thing I have ever been on in my life, her life since 2016. So she hated that. So again, back to the hotel pool, because that was her jam. And it's just like, my wife just had this whole like experience for her planned, and she didn't want to do any of the stuff. She just made her own fun. She at one point she was pretending she was invisible in the pool, and like it was a whole game. Like, and she had kids participating. They just created their own world. They could care less about what we thought is fun and what we should like put, like, oh, this is fun. You should experience this too. And they're like, no, I don't care. This is 2022. This is our world now. So after Disney, we go to visit my parents, and my parents are in their 80s. And so my dad's a very stoic man, and he kind of pulls me aside, and he's like, well, this is how stoic my dad is. He pulls me aside and just, apropos of nothing, goes, well, I guess I'm reaching that age when I'm on my way out. So it's time for me to pass on to you a bunch of stuff. And I was just like, whoa. Like, okay, like I didn't see this coming at all. So my dad's house is full of all of his interests throughout. My dad's a big outdoorsman. He hunts, he fishes, he grew up in rural East Texas. And so he's got like the huge, like giant, it looks like a giant safe full of like weaponry basically. And he's like, when I go, I want to pass this on to you. And I'm like, I'm not really interested in a lot of firearms. That's not really my jam. That's not how I live my life, like a doomsday prepper. But, but these are the things that he thought, he enjoys, that he thought things that are important, that he's trying to pass on to me. And I realized I'm doing the same thing that my daughter was doing when I was just like, oh, yeah, that's not my jam at all, and then it hit me. I was just like, whoa, doing the exact same thing. But then my dad's like, well, I know you're going to like this. And so he's got like his old like vinyl record collection. And he's like, I want to give this to you. And I was like, whoa, okay, that's my jam right there. He's got like an old, like this really nice, expensive turntable. He's like, this is for you. And I was like, okay, that's, my jam, the music that my parents were listening to when I was that was what got in, and that was like what I became interested in. It informed my musical taste. So that made me start thinking about what are the things that I'm passing on to my daughter that aren't intentional, like me not just saying, oh, this is what I think is important, what I think is cool, but just the things that we enjoy that she's kind of absorbing by osmosis. So I've started noticing things like, for example, I'm an engineer, right? So my daughter's very into tools and she's always like wanting to build things. And so I've never tried to say like, oh, building stuff is fun. She just knows dad builds buildings. And so she just kind of naturally gets into like, she likes putting on a hard hat and a little vest, and she like, playing with screwdrivers and stuff. She's like, someday I'm gonna build a house. And I'm just like, yo, that's awesome. That's just a piece of me that she's picked up that I didn't even think she would be interested in. And, I come from two different religions. So we've never tried to like impart a certain religion on her. We just, be us. And I've noticed, this makes dad a little proud, that she emulates my religious practices more than mom's. Never tried to put it on her, but that's just, what's, she's absorbed, and what she's figured, oh, that's what I like. That's what I'm going to incorporate into. So it's just one of those things that I just, as in our world, as we're trying to, pass on our lineage, pass on who we are to our kids, to the next generation, we also have to have that faith that, that the next world is going to be theirs. They're going to make it, and they're going to take just those pieces of us, those pieces from their past, and incorporate them into the world that we're not going to be a part of. So that's my story.
Thank you so much, Chris. Again, make your neighbors wonder what you're up to. Applaud and cheer. And you can tell Chris what you thought about his story in our chat. If any of these stories make you think of your own memories, please share those in the chat. We have 2 stories left this evening, and our next story is a little bit of a change of pace. Because these storytellers are a married couple who like to tell stories together. That way, the audience gets both sides of the story. Jim Dennery is a journalist for the Atlanta Journal-Constitution, and Cindy Olney is a grief educator, and coach who founded Shadowlands Grief Coaching. They've been married for more than 25 years, which will sound much more impressive after you hear the story that they are about to share. So welcome to your screen, everybody, Jim and Cindy.
Hi, thanks. So why is it that every time we go on vacation, it turns into a game of Survivor?
Well, the first thing you need to know is that I plan all the vacations.
That's because I lack perspective on what would work at all. Growing up, vacations to me meant that I would jump into the back of a rather small car with my 4 siblings and our parents, and we would then drive for 600 miles to I don't know where I would end up sleeping on a motel room floor. Now, a successful trip for me meant that the Ramada Inn had shag carpeting.
Yeah, he's right. I'm a restless vacationer. there's nothing I hate more than to sit in a car for 600 miles and then sit in a Ramada Inn. So I make sure that when I plan, I pack our itinerary, that we have lots of interesting things to do. Because I grew up in the country and my father was an outdoorsy kind of person, I lean towards things like hiking and kayaking and snorkeling. But to say we are playing Survivor is a bit of a stretch.
Oh, really?
He's talking about a trip that we took when we were on a cruise. I saw this really cool excursion. You went into the rainforest and you got to take a tube down the rivers of Belize and you would go in and out of the caves. It sounded really cool. So I signed us up, and about the third day of the cruise, we were in Belize and it was the day of the excursion.
So we get on a small boat because we go into Belize City, and the harbor there can't accommodate anything bigger. And so then we get on land and we jump into this rickety old school bus, and lots of other people are piling in too. And so it's cramped, and we're in the tropics and it's hot and there's no air conditioning.
And there's no bathroom, and it was a 2.5 hour trip. And
we're now heading into the jungle, and it's on the bounciest road you can imagine. This is the kind of road that they make pickup truck commercials on, and so we're just getting our kidneys rattled. So anyway,
yeah, it was a rough road. It was a beautiful countryside. And they did give us a break. We stopped and we got to get out and we got to walk around a cashew grove, something I'd never seen before. Heard the stories of the El Salvadorans that came in and, and picked and harvested the cashews. So that was kind of cool.
Frankly, I still don't remember the cashews, probably because of what happened next when we got back on the bus and started driving even deeper into this jungle.
Yeah. The tour guide pulled out 2 laminated sheets of paper about this big, and front and back, he said, these are the kinds of animals that you might encounter in the part of the rainforest where we're doing our tour today. And so I looked at them, and then I passed them to Jim. And when I looked over, all of the blood had drained out of his face.
Snakes. There were lots and lots of snakes. So many snakes that you could have made a Samuel L. Jackson movie. That's how many snakes there were.
Yeah, and then what happened after that was even worse. Now, I have to tell you, get the feeling that the tour guide was a little was new and maybe wasn't real smooth, because the next thing he did was he handed us all a piece of paper. It was a waiver form that he wanted us to sign in the remotest part that you can imagine of Belize.
So these waivers would absolve them of any injury or even death that might occur on this trip, like maybe from a snake bite or something.
Yeah, but there was nothing to do. We pretty much had to sign the waivers. And so everybody did, or what?
Or we'd have to hitchhike back to Belize.
Yeah, we hadn't seen any other cars either. So we all had to sign the waivers, and everybody signed them and passed them forward to the tour guide, who tucked them in his bag. And, that was pretty quiet the rest of the trip, which was another hour or so. We finally came to the destination, the Jaguar Paw Resort, which sounds wonderful, but I have to admit is a bit of a euphemism, because it was a stone building that was 2 stories high, and there was an old Jeep and a car parked in front of it on a gravel driveway. And then you kind of pulled around, and the bus stopped in front of a building made of plywood. It was a white building made of plywood. That was the Jaguar Paw Resort restaurant. It had outdoor seating, which consisted of a dirt patio with lots of with an awning and lots of white plastic cafe chairs and tables.
It kind of looked like the parking lot at a Walmart.
So we all get out and there's a pile of tubes, and the tour guide tells us to grab our tube because we're gonna carry our tubes to the river. And he hands out these little headlamps that go around your head with a little tiny lamp on it. And he says, you're probably gonna want these because it's kind of dark in the caves. And then we walk about 15 minutes to the part of the river where we put in.
So we ease into the river, and it's really pretty and all. And we can see already just a little farther down, maybe a football field down, that there's the cave. And we start drifting toward it in the current. And just as we're almost in the entrance to the cave, I spot over to the left a long, thin thing bobbing in the water.
It's probably a tree branch.
It might have been a tree branch, but I've just seen 57 varieties of snakes on my way here. So that's what I'm thinking about. And now I'm in the dark. We are in the cave now, and it is just so dark. The headlamps, they're useless. They at best they look like stars way out in the galaxy. Yeah. But
dark doesn't really describe it. It's more like a blackout. Seriously, couldn't see the other people. You couldn't see the water. You couldn't see I couldn't see him. I couldn't see my hands in front of my face. And when you can't see anything, you start to see what's on the inside of your head. And that I was starting to see snakes too. So I pulled my arms out of the water and my legs out of the water. And I think I closed my eyes, but how could you tell when it was that dark in that cave? And I said a prayer because there are no atheists in the caves of Belize.
So we're in the cave maybe 5 minutes, and then we come out the other side. And we're back in the sunlight and lots of trees and that sort of thing. And you can see the next cave again, maybe another football field down, and we are quickly back in the total darkness. And I can't remember if it was that cave or another cave, the first cave, that my wedding ring slipped off my finger and fell into the water. And I jabbed my hand in there, and I can see that I can't see, but I can feel the bottom. It's really shallow there. And I just managed to feel around a little bit, and I find the ring. I guess it's the ring. I probably should check the inscription, but and so I shove it back on my finger, and I clench my fist for the rest of the trip.
Until we did this story, I had no idea that ever happened.
I swear to God it happened, but I got, I just didn't see a good reason to bring it up. and so now we're back in the sunlight again.
The most beautiful sunlight I've ever seen. And at that point, we saw some rapids ahead. It looked like it was pretty fun to go down the rapids.
Yeah, they're gentle rapids. It's like a small ride at Disney World or something.
And then we can see the tour guide at a bend in the river not far ahead, which meant no more caves. He was gesturing everybody to come out. So we finally got there. It got very shallow. We stood up, we grabbed our tubes, and we started the 15-minute hike back to the Jaguar Paw Resort restaurant.
So we walk up to that plywood building, and
counter service.
And they hand us our lunches, which are chicken, beans, and rice.
And the ubiquitous can of Coca-Cola, because everything goes better with Coke.
Even survival.
Thank you.
You, Cindy and Jim, still married, everybody, still married. I love that Cindy found out that you had lost your wedding ring, Jim, when you were telling the story, because I didn't know that happened. Oh my goodness. Yes. Like I said, feel free to share your own experiences in the chat. Let us know if you also have a spouse who is making you terrible journeys and wild journeys, but they're still together. It's okay. We have one more story for you this evening. We have one more storyteller, and based on my clipboard, our last storyteller is Amanda Roundtree, who occasionally speaks in third person, and you can find more about her at amandaroundtree.com. Oh, I was going to say last but totally least, because I've always wanted to say that, and now I can do it because it's self-deprecating. All right, last but totally least, Amanda. I was sitting in the emergency room, and my boyfriend at the time asked me, was it worth it? I will answer that later. But first, you must know that I am the most skilled, ungraceful person ever. Yes, I fully admit to being ungraceful. I injure myself quite frequently. However, I am skillful about it. I injure myself in creative ways. I prevent further injury by my nimbleness and my quick thinking. And I always gain something from the experience. I have fallen up the stairs far more than I have fallen down the stairs. Anybody can fall down the stairs, y'all, anybody, but it takes a certain talent. It takes a certain talent and skill to defy gravity and fall up the stairs. My first ever scar is from falling up the stairs, but I learned from that moment that no matter who is demanding that you hurry up and no matter who is demanding that you go faster, you slow down and you take care of yourself. And that's a good lesson. My first emotional scar related to the stairs was when I fell up them in Chicago. Now, I had just finished a date. It was a successful date. It was a first date, went really well. We were saying our goodbyes, and I went over to catch the train. So I went up the stairs to the platform to catch my L. And I was wearing my puffy vest with my fingerless gloves that have the little caps on them that turn them into mittens. And I had those crammed into the pockets of my puffy vest. So there was a lot of obstacles in pulling my hands back out again, which is important to note because I tripped up the stairs and I could not pull my hands out in time to catch my fall. I will say though, that I was skilled enough to move my body in such a way, upside down fish-like, that was like maybe an upward facing dog yoga position that allowed me to prevent myself from knocking my teeth out on the stairs or otherwise just hitting my face. Unfortunately, my backpack was pressing against my body, which was pressing against my hands in my pockets, which were pressing against the stairs. So they were really pinned in there and I was stuck on that staircase for kind of a long time. I remember I was like thinking like a turtle. I'm like flipped on my shell right now, kind of. So I started to just sway a little bit and eventually I picked up enough momentum that I could release one of my hands and then I got myself up. I noticed that my date saw that and we never saw each other again. But I always go up and down stairs with my hands free and out of any pockets. Like many others, I have some kitchen injuries. There's nothing special about that. I will say though that the largest scar that I have on my hand is pretty bad looking. Like it looks pretty terrible. I admit that. But you know what they say. You think I look rough. You should have seen the bagel. It was an event. It was an event, but I walked away victorious and I literally devoured my opponent. Ever since then, I do buy pre-cut bagels. Saves time, very convenient, no loss of blood, typically. I highly recommend. I saw my friend one day and she had her hand bandaged, like really bandaged, like you could just barely see the top of her fingers and you could see a little bit of her thumb. And when I asked her what had happened, she told me that she had been pitting an avocado and that's how she stabbed herself. So apparently the way that my friend pits an avocado, or at least the way that she used to pit an avocado, is she would cut the avocado in half and then hold the pitted side in one hand and then take a knife and stab the pit, pulling it out like a heart, like a villainous heart. I had always pitted avocados with a spoon like a tentative archaeologist. But of course, I'm sure as you've assumed, when she did this, the avocado slipped at the last second, so she actually stabbed the middle of her hand. When I heard her tell me this story, I did not hear a cautionary tale about how one should never pit an avocado. No. I heard a new hardcore way to pit an avocado. So the next time that I made guacamole, I repeated this method. Some of you may say that perhaps I have not as good of aim as my friend. Mayhaps some of you will say that I am not as strong as my friend. I choose to say that I am just more skillfully ungraceful because I only nicked my pinky, hardly a scar. There is a scar, but you can barely see it. And now I always pit my avocados with a professional avocado pitter. It slices, it cuts, and it digs out the pit without any sharp edges. I highly recommend it. Now, a skillful, ungraceful moment can happen at any time. So I always have to be aware for when this can happen. For example, I was at my boyfriend's apartment sitting on the couch, and he came out from the other room and told me that, oh, before we go out tonight, I'm going to go take a shower. He had already started to prepare for this event because the taking of the shower event, not going out, because he had undone his button and his zipper on his jeans. And I know what you're thinking because I was thinking the same thing. Perfect pantsing opportunity. Huh? All right. For those of you who do not know, pantsing is when you sneak up to someone, hopefully that you know, and hopefully in private, and you pull down their pants, thus revealing their chosen color of underwear that day. Pantsing is to a person as pitting is to an avocado. You take the noun, you make it a verb, and in so doing, you are denoting the removal of said noun. Pantsing and pitting. I didn't have a lot of time. I had to get to him before he got to the bathroom. So he was already practically out of my sight. So I jumped up from the couch, leapt over the back of it, ran toward him. He turned the corner. I almost turned the corner. And what he heard next was a loud thump as I hit the wall. Then he heard me let out a scream. Then he heard another thump as my body crumpled to the floor in pain. This may sound like failure. This was not failure. No, what I had just done unknowingly was given myself some more time. I needed more time. I just bought some more time. I couldn't stand, so I crawled over to him, and he was standing with his palms toward the ceiling and his face at me. And he said, "What just happened?" I looked him in the eyes and I said, "I'm going to do what I came here to do." Navy blue boxers. Yes. All right. So I did break really badly, at least one toe. And I was told that I had to be on crutches for several weeks. We had only been dating for like 2 months. But he was so kind. I was living in a 3-story walk-up. He was in a building with an elevator. So he insisted that I stay with him while I was on crutches. And I walked away from that injury. Well, I limped away from that injury with more than just the lesson to never cut corners when pantsing. I walked away with a husband because we're married now. So yes, it was worth it. And that's the truth. Yes. Thank you so much. I want to thank again all our storytellers. I want to thank Amy Salloway and Will Hayes and Chris Gray and Jim Dinnery and Cindy Olney and myself. I want to thank the library. I hope that these stories will inspire your own memories and your own experiences, and that you will share those experiences with each other. If you are in a home with other humans, please tell them your stories. If maybe your cat wants to hear them, you can also tell your cat. Maybe your cat is not a great listener. I get that. Cats aren't always the greatest of listeners, but call a friend, Zoom with somebody, call somebody and tell them, oh my gosh, I had a story that I heard a story that reminded me of you. Share your stories this week and beyond. And I'm gonna hand it back to Diane from the library. Thank you so much. And yeah, have a wonderful 2022, everybody.